Hey, who's on here? Who's with me? Hey. Who's with me on here? Don't be shy. Hey, girlfriend. How are you? I'm so tired. Wouldn't you like to know what is my favorite station lately? I was just flipping through TikTok. Watch my dog go full diva. See, it's totally addictive. You wouldn't believe the animal videos I watch. Ugh. I feel like a hot mess tonight. I tried to comb my hair before I got on here. Yeah, that didn't work out too well. I'm gonna get me another camera for my computer over there so I can just start sitting at my computer, I think. I think. When it's got I somehow got better lighting, I think. I don't know. Yeah, you shouldn't be surprised. I've been good today though. I haven't been on it near as long yesterday, or was it day before yesterday? I was on it for so long they told me to get off of it because I was liking stuff too much. So now I'm just careful as to what I'm liking. So it looks like it might just be me and you. Hello, who's on here? If you can't find the chat button, let me show you. Hey, Miss Lucille. How are you? Thank you for letting me read this. I appreciate it. Turn the volume down here. Well, that worked right. Right. Okay. If you can't find the chat button, just tap once on the video and the chat button comes up. Okay? Maybe that'll help you figure out where it's at. I don't know why they can't make things easier for everybody. Super excited. Yay. Lucille, do you want me to just start at chapter 1 and just read through? That's normally what I do, unless you want something specific read. Fancy, is it too loud? I just picked up where it left off last night. It's some old time rock and roll, classic rock stuff. Okay. Some books it's better to start at the beginning for sure, and then some I can kind of get a good scene in if I just start in the middle, because if it starts off slow or whatever, some it just varies. All right, give me another minute. We'll go ahead and jump on. Got 4 people on here, but only you 2 are talking to me, so I don't know what's up with the shy ones. Nina will jump on here in a little bit. She's doing like 15 other things, so she'll jump in here probably about 15-20 after. So my glasses out so I can see. Oh, excuse me. I'm so tired. I'm so glad it's Thursday. And I've not done anything this week but work, and work's slow right now. So it's just a lot of sitting around doing nothing and can't leave. So, Lucille, is this your first book? I'm not familiar with your stuff. Love the cover. Love, love, love the cover. And I tagged you on TikTok. Good. I tagged you on TikTok. I don't know if you saw that or not. I'm just learning about TikTok. You were my second post ever. So yeah. Yeah, it's a good book. I mean, good cover. I've not read the book yet, but it's a good cover. That was let's see what I can do with this. I don't know what I can do with it. So I'm learning. I'm still learning TikTok. So yeah, they can. I hear people fussing over there about their videos being taken down and stuff. And I'm trying to learn it before I start doing a whole lot over there. If I can dig myself out of the rabbit hole long enough to post something, I'm not sure how I can do this stuff over there. So I'm still trying to figure it out. And I will. All right, let me go ahead and get started. In chapter 1. The bells on the door clattered as it swung open. Jessie pushed inside, closing it behind her. She leaned back against the door, her eyes closed. The scent of sage and lavender filled her nose, overpowering the other aromas. She inhaled it slowly. The pounding of her heart faded from her ears. Her breathing slowed. She pushed herself up off the door, straightened her blazer, and pulled her bag back onto her shoulder. She inhaled once more and opened her eyes. The store before her was as it always was. Display racks stood on the hardwood floors filled with bags of assorted teas, herbs and spices, gifts and jewelry. Shelves lined the partial brick walls filled with rocks, crystals, and books, all organized by Maggie, her cousin, and the owner, who was shooting quick glances at Jessie from behind the counter. Jessie gave her a tight smile and began walking toward her. Maggie held her own forced grin as she spoke with the customer she was helping. Maggie's light purple choppy bob blended in with the brightly decorated store. She drummed her fingers on the counter that had books stacked high above her head. "Thank you so much, Haley," Maggie said. "I'll be sure to remember that when Roger makes his next order." They smiled at each other, and Haley turned to walk toward the door. As she passed Jessie, she gave her a fake smile. Jessie veered her way away from Haley right before she bumped shoulders with her. She rolled her eyes as the door closed behind her. "She used to be nice. She used to be so nice," Maggie said as Haley left the store. "I remember," Jessie said. "What happened?" "I don't know, but Roger spends enough money for me to ignore her. Want some tea?" "No, just a chair," Jessie said, taking a seat behind the counter. "Anyone else here?" She glanced around the empty shop. Her eyes lingered on the door labeled "The Magic Room." Anyone not familiar with the supernatural read the sign as "Employees Only." Being part of a long line of witches, Jessie saw through the glamour. "No, only Haley and her new tattoo so far today," Maggie said. That's why she looked extra smug. "Yes, Roger did it himself. It's runic for gift. Roger says I'm a gift to the world, but you wouldn't know much about ruins." Maggie's impression of Haley was spot on. "Looks like a bunch of crisscross lines, if you ask me. Anyway, what happened?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Jessie said. She wasn't sure she wanted to share her morning with anyone. She wanted to digest it first. "Really?" Maggie said. "You barge in here, slam the door, practically sling the bells across the room, and end up panting against the door. But you don't know what I'm talking about?" Maggie looked back at the door. "Were you chased? Did Mr. Fuller's dog get off his leash again? I know Bunny looks fierce, but his name is Bunny, and he just wants to lick you." "No," Jessie said. She leaned back into her chair and looked at the ceiling. How could she explain this to Maggie, or anyone else for that matter? "Then something happened at the police station. What did you find out?" "Not much." Jessie put her head in her hands. "It's so embarrassing." "Really?" Maggie dragged out the word. Her southern accent came through. I said about 15 minutes. I was about 5 minutes short." "Hi, Ori." Lucille, Ori is Nina, so she's Ori on here and Nina in the rest of the world. She leaned forward and rested her hand on her hands. "Start from the beginning." Jessie stared at Maggie. She knew she had to tell her, but did Maggie have to look so eager? "You can tell me, or you can tell Aunt Sylvia," Maggie added. Aunt Sylvia was the coven leader. Jessie never wanted to tell Aunt Sylvia about her fiasco at the police station. "Fine, I'll tell you." Jessie crossed her arms over her chest. "So I walked into the precinct. I have my suit on that surprisingly still fits after sitting in my closet for a year. I have my bag, my business cards, and a plan. I walk up to the desk and request to speak to the detective in charge of Aiden Jacob and Patty Nelson's disappearances. After explaining that I was the family's attorney, they pointed me to two desks on the right side of the room. Okay, I'm going to stop you right here and say your suit is on point. Go ahead. Thank you. I go to the desk. There I met a Detective Thompson, tall, dark, and pervy. He kept looking me up and down. From Thompson, I learned that they know little about the case. We actually have more information than the cops right now. Also, he isn't really working on it. Detective Chuck Massey is the lead on the case, but his assigned partner just had a baby, so Thompson is filling in when needed. I'm trying to get Thompson to stop shaking my hand. Massey is tall, blonde, blue eyes, and has way too much confidence. Typical detective. I like him already. Go on. You would. First, I ask if he has any updates. He says no. I explained that my clients want to be in the loop. He pushes back on sharing information and we banter back and forth. I hand him my card, which he doesn't look at, and I shake his hand, and I find out nothing. That's it? How is that embarrassing? No, I saw nothing. No vision, no past, no present. There was no gleaning. When I shook Thompson's head, I saw his entire life story, his mom, sisters, the partner he actually works with, how he likes his coffee. I shook Massey's hand and zilch. For the first time in a year, I touch someone and don't see anything. Jessie rubbed her face with her hands. She only got the power to glean a year ago. She saw the past of anyone she touched. Even the briefest of nudges filled her head with a person's history. What if she was broken? Hope filled her for just a moment. She could get her life back. Wow, I don't know what to say. Do you think he's a witch too? But how is that embarrassing? Maggie's eyebrows bunched together. I kind of didn't let his hand go. I actually grabbed on with my other hand. I kept looking from our hands to his face, back and forth, back and forth. No, Maggie whispered. Hey, Miss Shirley. Yes, Jessie said. I was so flustered. He actually pulled away. My brain kicked in and I let go. I thanked him for his time and I ran out of there. I raced here. What's going on? Maggie was looking at Jessie with wide eyes and an open mouth. Well, there are several reasons this could happen, she said, breaking the silence. Like what? Jessie asked. You said witch, but I was thinking demon, or maybe I'm hopeless as a witch and should retire early, then go back to my regularly scheduled life. Unlikely, Maggie said. He could be a witch that has a charm to reject others' magic. What did he smell like? When you touched him, did you feel anything at all? Well, he smells amazing. Like cedar and spring rain. And when we touched, there was a little static and a feeling of warmth moved up my arm. Cedar and spring rain? Did you hug him? Jessie shook her head. Maggie continued. Tell me about the static. Was it a lot of static? Anything else you noticed in that moment? Normal static, but instead of making me jerk my hand back, I just latched on and I couldn't look away from his eyes. He could be a demon. You said his eyes were blue? Did they flicker while you were holding his hand? No, I'm sure. There was something about him I couldn't tear my eyes away from. Well, there is a thing, but I want to look into it first. Out with it, Jessie said, pointing at Maggie. I don't want to give you the wrong idea in case I'm wrong, Maggie said, drumming her fingers on the counter. Jessie stared at Maggie. Out with it, she said again. Maggie had an annoying habit of never being wrong, yet she always second guessed herself. She was a bit of a research queen. Normally, Jessie appreciated her thoroughness, but right now, she needed answers. He could be your compliment. Is it compliment? Am I saying that right? Why does it look different? Because it's an E instead of an I, maybe? Maggie said with a small shrug. What's a compliment? Jessie asked. Maggie's drumming stopped. Really? She stood up and went into the room. Okay, thought so. I just want to make sure I was saying it right. I don't see this spelling. I mean, I'm sure I have seen it, but I don't. You get me. Maggie's drumming stopped. Really? She stood up and went into the room behind the counter. Maggie had a workshop there where she put together teas, potions, and spell bags. Jessie didn't move. She was overwhelmed. She was sinking. Law school fooled her into thinking she would never feel overwhelmed again. Even at her first job as a lawyer at the local law firm, Goldstein, Moore, and Smith, she never buckled under the load. But the lead on a case for the first time was empowering, not overwhelming. Then a year ago, Jessie's grandmother, Gigi, passed away. So this compliment is like two things that fit, like they complement each other. And then, like, I give you a compliment, like you're pretty, then that's with an I. Am I right? Am I saying that right? That's the way I'm thinking it in my head. Okay. Gigi was a force all her own. She was the leader of the Moonlight Oak Coven. She had respect and knowledge and opened this shop decades ago. Most importantly, Gigi had the witch power to glean. Many viewed this as a dangerous power to know everything about a person with a single touch. Invasive powers like gleaning were often gifted to one witch at a time, or so the old book said. Once that witch dies, it moves on to another one, usually one within a different coven, often a different country. When Gigi died, the ability to glean, much to everyone's surprise, went to Jessie. As a kid, Jessie was happy she didn't get a witch power. She and Maggie were the first children in 3 generations to not develop one. She stopped paying attention to all the coven lessons, not that she had paid much attention before. She grew up and pursued a career. Then Gigi died. When Jessie woke up that day, everything felt energized. Her hair cooperated. All the lights were green on the way to work. She got a good parking spot. She felt vibrant. Then she shook a colleague's hand and everything stood still. She dropped to the floor, flooded with images of his past, good and bad. She couldn't breathe as everyone started touching her, trying to help her up, asking what was wrong. That was the day overwhelmingly took on a new meaning. Jessie ran to her office and barricaded the door. She called the first person that came to mind, Gigi. But Gigi didn't answer. Maggie did and came to her rescue. She brought her gloves and a hat, just in case. Maggie was the one who deserved this gift. Jessie thought it was a curse. Today, she thought gleaning would become the gift everyone told her it was. She could help find the missing children, and she failed. It failed. And here she sat, disappointed in herself and delighted at the same time. She felt like the worst sort of person. Maggie came out of the back room with a stack of books in her arms. I didn't know there were books. I didn't know there were books in there, Jessie said. There aren't. Maggie put the books on the counter. They're from the library connected to it. I always forget about that room, Jessie muttered, grabbing the book off the top. Old Magics and Companions by Joseph Starlin. And where are the books you took home last night? Asked Maggie. In the car, Jessie said. She turned the page and skimmed. All I found was a good collard green recipe. Okay, said Maggie. So a compliment is a person perfectly suited for an active witch, one with a witch power. It's like a familiar that's humanoid. And that's exactly what I was thinking, Maggie said as she flipped through the next book on the stack. How come I've never heard about this? Jessie asked. Well, for one, you didn't pay attention to the lessons, Maggie said, and not many witches find their complement. The only pair I know about were Gigi and Gramps. Oh, here is one description. If a witch is pure and has the luck of old, she may come across her complement. She will know her complement when her innate power has no effect on the chosen. Complements will become the witch's closest confidant and, in most cases, her spiritual and physical partner. Spiritual and physical partner? Jessie said. What am I supposed to do? Marry him? What does spiritual partner mean? That's insane. Calm down, girl. This book was written in 1200 and translated several times, Maggie said. Does that mean none of the spells I cast will work on him? She said. No, Maggie said. Your innate ability won't work, so no gleaning. You can do anything else to him. That came out wrong. Besides, we have more books to reference. Well, I don't want to reference them, Jessie said. We have more important things to do. Aiden and Patty are still missing, and we don't know where they are. Yes, and if a cop is your complement, we might get the upper hand, Maggie pointed out. We need all the help we can get. What does that mean? Jessie crossed her arms. She was expected to charm a cop for his help. Did Maggie want her to put out for the upper hand? It means that getting to know this detective could help us find the kids, so it wouldn't hurt you to learn more about him. Maggie pulled another book and began skimming. That's the weakest argument you've ever given me, Jessie said. What can I say? Maggie shrugged. I'm tired and not getting enough sleep. I've been scrying, reading, and calling in favors for the last 2 days. Like I said, more important things to do, like pretending you can see into the future, Jessie smirked. So, why do you want to look into compliments? Fine, the psychics are scrying, and my brain needs something it can solve. Maggie looked up smiling. So, is he cute? Is he cute? Jessie said. That's what you want to know? Yeah, let me live vicariously through you for a bit. You don't need to live through me. You're younger than I am. Go get your own hottie. Hottie? So he's a hottie? Maggie asked. She wagged her eyebrows and propped her elbows on the counter with her head in her hands. You mentioned he is tall, blonde, blue eyes, and oozes confidence. Never say oozes confidence again, Jessie pretended to retch. But he's confident. I bet he has great posture. Did you give him a half smile when he shook your hand? Jessie raised an eyebrow. Who are you thinking of right now? Detective Chuck, played by a young Daniel Craig. I don't need this kind of stress. And what happens if I tell him about all this? He becomes an exposure risk. Jessie rubbed her temples, then moved to her face. She should have kept her mouth shut. I'm trying to de-stress the situation. 10 minutes of daydreaming will do us some good. Besides, there is a spell that can erase his knowledge of the supernatural. Maggie shrugged. Jessie squinted at her. How many people has she used that spell on? Fine. Moving forward. Say this guy is my compliment and not an evil witch demon guy. What should I be expecting? Maggie looked at Jessie with a blank expression. She then gestured toward the books. Have books, we'll read, Maggie said. We could always talk to Aunt Sylvia. No, Jessie said. Not yet. I don't want her involved until I have a handle on this situation. Until then, don't say a word. You could talk to your mom, and I might be able to put my hands on Gigi's old journals, Maggie said. Jessie rolled her eyes. Jessie's mom was less involved with the coven than Jessie, and she'd had a power for years. She just ignored hers. Jessie's was harder to ignore. Journals first, mom later. Jessie picked up another book. You know she doesn't like to talk about magic, but you're right, I should call her. Oh, here is something else about compliments. Really? Jessie stood and looked over. Come on. Maggie showed her as she pointed to the start of the section. Maggie, you are the best. I know, Maggie said, smiling. Here it says that the witch's active power cannot affect a witch's compliment, which we knew. Once a witch meets his or her compliment, the compliment will see past the magic veil. Compliments are a witch's match. They usually stay with the witch for life, either as a friend or a lover, and in the case of Jessie Osmond, her compliment will be her lover. Maggie rolled the R as she said the word lover. Lover. Jessie whacked her on the shoulder. Okay, let me see that. Jessie took the book from Maggie and started reading through the passage. Jessie just began to feel confident using her power, like she could get her life back together. A compliment would derail her progress, right? Do you think there's a section that details how to tell someone that they are a compliment and that magic is real? Jessie asked, frowning at the text. Well, you can ask around the family on the magic is real part. Only a handful are married to other witches. And no compliments? Nope, just Gigi and Gramps. Maggie looked at Jessie. So technically, he could be a witch too, like Gramps, and you are each other's compliments. So let's talk about the part where you gave him your number. No, I gave him my card in a professional manner. And what's the likelihood of a cop you don't know walking in here? Slim to none, Maggie said. You know I don't do well with cops. You should call him, though, at the station. Wine and dine him. Show him a magical time and get the scoop on the kids' disappearances. I think not. You've been here poring over the volumes. Any idea where those two kids are? Nope. But I know the kidnapper is magical. Once the first kid was taken, everyone in the coven placed protection spells around their houses and children. Whoever or whatever took them knows magic. Do you think they're in the community? No, I don't. But some people do. It's causing some rifts, Maggie said. Who around here isn't a part of the coven? Jessie asked. She only knew the witches associated with their coven, even the ones who lived 100 miles out. You'd be surprised, Maggie said. The bells on the door rang as a customer entered the shop. Jessie's eyes widened and she dropped to the floor, sitting behind the counter. Maggie looked down at her. Jessie just shook her head, putting her finger to her lips. She hoped Maggie would play it cool. She was a little unpredictable. The last thing Jessie wanted was to visit with Detective Hottie right now. Hi, welcome to Herbs and Healing of Savannah, Maggie said. Hi, I'm Detective Chuck Massey, he said. Jessie could hear the old counter creak under his weight as he leaned on it. Hi, I'm Margaret Watkins, Maggie said. You can call me Maggie. I'm looking for someone. Do you think you could help me? His deep voice floated down, giving Jessie shivers behind the counter. From Jessie's seat, she could see Maggie's smile widen. Yes, Maggie said. Jessie heard Maggie as she mumbled a spell under her breath, followed by Maggie yelling, Reveal! Jessie imagined Maggie dropping herbs at the detective. Some of them floated down on top of Jessie's head. He would arrest Maggie. She just knew it. Maggie performed this spell on several occasions. She liked to keep the combination of herbs on hand to reveal possessed, magical, or other customers. Jessie buried her head into her knees. Thank you for the handful of potpourri, he said. I'm looking for Jessica Osmond. I believe she works here. Really? Maggie said more to herself. She doesn't work here? Oh, yes, she works here. Jessie hit Maggie's shin from under the counter. She's not here right now. Well, she left her jacket at the station earlier. Jessie could see the edge of a cardigan draped across the counter next to the cash register. Also, if she could call me, I have a few questions for someone posing as a lawyer in order to get information regarding an active case. I believe it constitutes as fraud. Jessie heard him tap the counter and move. Posing as a lawyer? Who did he think he was? Jessie jumped up from behind the counter, red in the face. I am a lawyer with an active license. I have every right to question the progress of the police department on behalf of my clients. The detective smiled. I spoke with the people at Goldstein, Moore and Smith. I hear you took a leave of absence a year ago. What exactly do you work here? Why exactly do you work here? Jessie looked at Maggie and then back at the detective, switching from one foot to the other. I'm helping my family while freelancing. Family comes first. What do y'all think so far? Chapter 2. Chuck looked at Jessie Osmond as she stood with her head held high across the counter. She didn't exactly look like the family that owned the shop. He remembered Ms. Oblina Watkins. She always sent work to his father's auto shop, and he'd seen Maggie Watkins at the shop as well. She's Mrs. Watkins' granddaughter, if he remembered correctly. Mrs. Watkins used to joke about being so white she glowed in the moonlight. Jessie Osmond was a lovely shade of brown, quite the opposite of Mrs. Watkins, and her black hair held beautiful curls that poofed out of the back of her tight ponytail, more like a rabbit's cottontail. He knew she was a lawyer, and he baited her out of hiding by poking at her pride. He spent the time to look her up after she ran from the station. There was something about the way she walked out that made him want to find out more. That and the fact that she latched onto his hand like she was afraid to let go. Was it to find out if she was connected to the case or just for her? He wasn't sure at the moment. Did she know more than she was letting on? The families of the missing children were holding back something. That he knew. Maybe Jessie Osmond could help. His gut said it would be worth it either way. Family, huh? He said, leaning back against the counter. If you must know, Detective Massey, Maggie said, we're cousins. I needed help after our great-grandmother passed, and Jessie was nice enough to put her career on hold to help. This store has been in the family for decades. He could hear Maggie tap her fingers on the counter. There was a hint of truth to the lie that passed from her lips. Jessie worked here, but not because of the death of Mrs. Watkins. Chuck kept his eyes on Jessie. She had answers he needed. She bit her bottom lip, but kept eye contact. And Chuck could get lost in those dark blue eyes. Please call me Chuck, he said. Mrs. Osmond, is there anywhere we can talk more privately? Jessie looked around the shop as she rubbed her hands down the side of her legs. You can use the employees only room. Maggie pointed to a room toward the back of the store. The door was ajar and the light was on. That door says the magic room, he said. Maggie nudged Jessie, whose eyes widened the size of saucers. So it does, Maggie said. Just don't touch anything. If you'll excuse us, Jessie said as she pulled Maggie away from the counter and into the open room behind them. Chuck leaned in, trying to eavesdrop. He heard small hisses and sharp T's at the end of words as Jessie waved her arms, talking to Maggie. He straightened up as they both came out of the room. Jessie motioned for them to move to the magic room. The room was much larger than the storage closet he expected. It had shelves similar to the main store. The labels were color-coded and bold. Unrecognizable symbols danced on the labels beside the names. Jessie closed the door behind them. Chuck looked at a bin marked Feathers of Grace. He picked one up. The color changed in the light as he turned it. Don't touch that, Jessie said as she snatched it out of his hand and put it back. What? He asked. Why? He watched Jessie as she sighed and opened and closed her mouth before saying, It's magic and dangerous. Magic isn't real, he said with a sigh. He didn't have time for fairy tales. He questioned his motivation for following her here. Maybe she came to work here because of a meltdown. If it were only so easy, Jessie said. She walked to the door and pushed it open quickly. Chuck peered around Jessie to see Maggie on the ground. Eavesdropper. Jessie's hands were on her hips. She shook her head at Maggie and shut the door. Magic is very real, Jessie said, turning toward Chuck. No one wishes it was a fantasy more than me. And why is that? He asked. She looked at the ground, her arms crossed over her chest. That's a long story that I'm not ready to tell, Detective. She looked up. Those dark blue eyes peered into his. What exactly do you want to talk to me about? Chuck lost himself in her eyes. Why did he track her down again? Why was she at the station? The kids, he said. You have a connection with the two families. What exactly did you hope to learn from your visit? And please, call me Chuck. Well, Chuck, I wanted to know if there was any recent information, Jessie said as she glanced around the room. The parents are going crazy. Nothing we've tried has helped us find their kids. This is a police investigation. It should not involve you. Any movement on your part can destroy any progress the department has made. What have you done exactly? Frankly, we have resources that the police don't have, Jessie said, and our resources are revealing nothing. We're at a dead end. We could use your help. We hope that you would have better leads, and I don't know, maybe we could work together. What resources? Chuck looked down at Jessie. She lifted her head high. Of the magical kind, Jessie said. That's all you need to know. I would like to know the specifics, Chuck said between his teeth. Outside involvement was nothing he took lightly. People had died from it. He watched as she bit her lip and took a deep breath. We've tried everything from scrying and tracking spells to enlisting the local werewolf pack to sniff them out. Chuck stared at Jessie. He must have stepped into the nut house. He really should leave or arrest her for interfering in an active investigation. But something tugged at the back of his mind. That spark when they first touched, was it more than just static electricity? Werewolf pack, he heard himself saying. He rolled his eyes for even entertaining the notion. Please, don't go telling anyone and everyone, Jessie said. I just feel like I can trust you, and I need you to trust me. I can help you find those kids. We can, Maggie and I. You are going to have to give me more than just your word on magic. It's pretty unbelievable. I can't put it in a report. Jessie looked around the room. She grabbed a small rock from the wall beside the door. Holding it up for him to see, she closed her eyes and began taking deep breaths. She suddenly opened her eyes and said, "Rock of the ground, worm out and around." The rock in her hand glowed, then it flattened to half its height and uncurled. An earthworm wiggled where the rock once sat. Chuck's mouth hung open. His mother's voice echoed in his head, telling him that flies were going to fly inside his mouth. But this wasn't like watching a baseball game or a shuttle launch. Nothing he could tell Nothing he could tell himself could get him to close it. Jesse took a few steps forward. Do you want to hold it?" Jesse asked. Chuck stared at the worm in Jesse's hand. He was aware of her biting her lip and moving her weight from foot to foot. He took a shaky breath and held out his hand. The worm wiggled around when she gave it to him, and it almost fell to the floor. Between the worm and her lips, he was a little distracted. He let it move through his fingers. He felt the worm as it wiggled. Then he sniffed it. It looked, felt, and smelt like an earthworm. If he had a pole, he'd go fishing. "How long will this last?" he asked in a whisper. "Forever, or until I change it back." "Is it always that easy?" Chuck looked at her. Her frown was deep. His mouth was still gaping. "No, the rocks in here are charged or energized with magical energy. That's why it's in this room. I would need a longer spell if it was an uncharged rock." "Can you change it back in my hand?" Chuck wanted to feel the magic to see if he could feel the magic. Maybe he was having a stroke or hallucinating. It was the obvious explanation. As Jesse touched his hand to position it, static warmth tingled down his arm. They stopped and stared at each other. Chuck could hear her heart beating, or maybe it was his. Jesse shook her head and moved his hand so his palm pointed upward with the worm in the middle. She took a deep breath. "What was done, now undone. Return the worm to the rock that's true." The worm wiggled and curled in on itself. It glowed again, a soft blue glow. Its size doubled and hardened. Just as quickly as before, it was a rock. Chuck turned it over in his shaking hand. He smelled it. "Does it still smell like a worm?" Jesse asked. "No, just like a rock." Chuck's eyes were wide. He looked at the rock, then at Jesse, and back at the rock. "Good," Jesse smiled. "The last few times I've tried, the smell lingered." "So, magic?" Chuck said. He stared at the rock. His heart beat hard in his chest. "Yeah, magic." "I have to go," Chuck said. He squeezed the rock in his hand. The pain helped him focus, but he needed to leave this crazy place. He was hallucinating. It must be something from that potpourri Miss Maggie Watkins put in his hand. He backed up and bumped into the door. Jesse frowned at him. He searched for the doorknob behind him with his free hand. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I really think you should stay, and we can talk about it." Jessie held out a hand in front of her and inched toward him. Couldn't she see he wasn't a dumb dog she could coax into submission? He finally found the knob and fumbled out the door. With urgency, he walked toward the entrance. He didn't look back at Miss Watkins. He didn't look back at Jessie. He made it out the door with a loud clang of the bells behind him. Inside his car, with the rock still clutched in his hand, he thought of the one person he could trust, and he started the car. Jesse stared at the door as it banged shut. The bells clashed loudly inside the shop. "So," Maggie said, "you take it well?" "Not exactly," Jesse said. "I guess we need to put together the amnesia spell." "Nah," Maggie said. "He'll be back. I've got a good feeling about him." Jesse turned and looked at her cousin. "I'm going to go look for that spell anyway." Do what you want, like you said, but don't take too long. Finding the kids takes priority. While Maggie thought she was an excellent judge of character, Jessie was good at covering every angle. That made her an excellent lawyer, and today she would channel that energy into the spell to keep the detective from exposing the supernatural. Trying to decide. All right, I'll read a little bit more because we got to have a little bit more time. But Chapter 3. Chuck made his way over to his father's auto shop. Alan Massey was Chuck's father in all the ways that mattered. He he learned in high school that Alan wasn't his biological father, but it didn't change how Chuck felt. Alan was his dad and would always be the best person to talk to when things got rough. Today was one of those days. Chuck pulled up to the shop. The Massey and Sons automotive sign stood tall in the front of the building. It was the best shop in Southside Savannah, according to the local paper. Chuck remembered the time he told his dad he didn't want to be a mechanic, that he wanted to be a police officer. Chuck knew his dad hoped his kids would take over one day. He expected his father to be furious and disappointed. Alan just pulled Chuck into the biggest hug and said, "No matter what you do, I'll be proud of you." Chuck walked into the small shop and was greeted by his dad. The front waiting room held 4 chairs and a desk. A small hallway behind the desk led to the bathroom and an office where Alan did all the paperwork. Alan tried to teach Chuck at one point how to do all the office work, but that didn't last long. "Hey, son," his dad said while filling out a form. "Hey," Chuck said, "do you have time to talk?" To my son, the detective, he smiled and put down his pen. "Always. Let's go to the office." Chuck closed the door after they entered the small office. He took a seat to find his dad looking at him with a raised eyebrow. "Must be serious if you're closing the door," Alan said. "It's private," Chuck said. He tried to think of a way to talk about what just happened while he looked around the familiar room. His dad sat behind a desk with an old computer monitor to one side. Papers and manuals covered the rest of the desk. The walls held old auto parts posters that his father found funny. Behind his father's head hung the license for the business and certifications his father thought most important. He had his sister's certification displayed as well. "You just missed your sister," Alan said. Chuck thought he could come up with a better way to break the tension. "Did she bring him with her?" Chuck asked. His sister Haley was currently seeing someone Chuck despised. Their parents disliked the guy themselves. "Unfortunately," Alan said with a deep frown. "She dropped off his car to get it worked on. An oil change and new brakes." "What?" Chuck said to them. "She can do that herself. She even has the tools." "I know," Alan shook his head. "I told her she could do it herself and even use a bay here. He said that she had better things to do." "And now he's talking for her?" Chuck sat back in the chair. "What has she gotten herself into?" "I don't know what to call. I don't want to cause you any more frustration, but I thought you should know the latest with your sister," Alan said. "So let's change gears. What's on your mind, Chuck?" "Well, I've had a strange morning," Chuck said. He stuck his hand in his pocket and grabbed the rock. Jesse asked him not to tell anyone, but he needed a different perspective. He trusted his father more than anyone, and he gave rational, calm advice. "How so?" "I'm working on this case with the missing children. I'm sure you've seen it on the news. Anyway, I may have a lead, but the lead is crazy, or I'm crazy, or going crazy." Chuck shook his head. I figured you'd love that voice. "Define crazy." "My potential lead thinks she's a witch." Alan's eyes got wide. What's this young lady's name? Jessie. Jessie Osmond. Alan shook his head. That name doesn't sound familiar. Why does she think she's a witch, and why is that crazy? I hear Wicca is very popular. Well, she is a lawyer, but she left her job to help her cousin at the herb shop near Forsyth Park. And I'm starting to think she's not crazy, that maybe she is a witch. Is that Oblina Watkins' old shop? His father asked. Yeah, Chuck said. And what if magic is real? None of this makes sense. I shouldn't even be telling you any of this. I mean, if magic is real, how am I supposed to do my job? How can I investigate something if it's tampered with magically? And then it brings up whether magic is inherently good or bad. And are there other magical creatures, or should I just go see a neurologist? Chuck put his head in his hands. The thing is, I believe her and everything she's told me. She turned this rock into a worm right before my eyes. Chuck held up the rock to his dad. What's the cousin's name? His father asked. Did you hear what I said? Chuck asked. What does it matter? Just indulge me. Alan smirked at Chuck. Maggie Watkins? Chuck frowned back at his dad. That's right. Alan rubbed his chin. Maggie took over when Oblina died. Yeah, I guess, Chuck said with a shrug. I've seen her here before. Yeah, she gets her car worked on here. The entire coven does. The supernatural community trusts this shop. What? Chuck asked. Supernatural community? Yeah. Alan leaned forward and put his elbows on his knees and looked Chuck straight in the eye. Now, everything I'm about to tell you can't leave this room. As in, you can't talk about this at your office or with your sister. I hate to break it to you, but magic is very real. I have a couple of werewolves working here. Great workers. They just need extra time off 3 nights a month. 3 nights? Chuck closed his eyes and massaged his temples. Let's come back to that. Why am I just hearing about this? Son, you've always seen things in black and white. Things are good or bad, were good or bad. And you wanted to be a cop since you were little. I didn't know how to tell you that some things were gray and existed outside the law. There are some things you can't arrest. There's some things you can't arrest, and some things that don't need arrested. Some seem scary and they aren't bad. Are you saying they are trustworthy? Chuck could hardly believe what his father was saying. The wolves who work here? Alice asked. Sure, I'd trust them with my life. That doesn't mean there aren't bad ones. Just like everything else in life, some are good, some are bad, and some are in a bad spot. Chuck nodded his head at his dad's words. And Haley doesn't know? He asked. No, Alan said. I was going to tell her. Then Roger showed up. Suddenly, nothing I said meant anything. She thinks I've been lying to her about anything and everything. Chuck shook his head. He really hated that Roger, but Chuck couldn't find anything on him. And all the wolves here say he smells bad. Oh, and all the wolves here say he smells bad. It worries me, Alan said. Bad how? Chuck lifted an eyebrow. Just bad, like bad magic, one of them said. The lines on his his dad's forehead deepened. What does that even mean? Chuck asked. His dad shrugged his shoulders and leaned back in his chair. Chuck leaned back as well and scrubbed his face with his hands again. He looked at the ceiling and hoped something would cause the world to make sense again. How long have you known about the supernatural? Chuck asked. Since I was 18, Alan said. A werewolf bit my best friend and turned him into one. It's another long story, at least a story for another time. Isaiah is a werewolf. I wonder how many other people I know that are supernatural. Chuck sat forward on the chair with his elbows on his knees and stared at the wall. I think these two witches at the shop can help with my case. Is it crazy to consider that? I've known Ablina since I was 20 years old, Alan said. I'd trust her with my life, and I've always had a good feeling about Maggie. And the wolves here say nothing but good things about her. Of course, you decide for yourself. What about Jessie? Chuck asked. He straightened his back. I don't recall that name, Alan said. You're on your own there, but you have a good gut. Listen to it. Thanks, Dad, Chuck said. Alan came over to Chuck and slapped him on the back. As he walked through the door, he called out, Oh, and your sister got a tattoo. Chuck looked up at his father, slack-jawed. It's awful, his dad said. Then left Chuck there to think things over. And that's where I'm going to leave it. It's kind of the middle of chapter 3, but it's changes scenes there. So what do y'all think? Oh, that was good timing. Whew. Thank you, Miss Lucille, for letting me read this. I love it. I'll have to add that to my TBR list and figure out when I can finish it. Does it sound different when it's read aloud? A lot of authors find it very liberating sometimes, and then sometimes they actually find different things they want to rewrite about it, but they always say it sounds completely different. Thank you. I've been working on those voices for 2 years now. Yep. I don't do female voices very well. Not sure why. You would think that would be the easier one, but I've got several male voices down pretty good. I can do a pretty good small reverse harem pretty good now. But yeah. Oh no, I mean, I always use just my voice for the main female character, unless there's just something specific about her that needs a different voice. But other than that, I just kind of, it just depends on the character. And I wasn't sure. Maggie's an old name, but old names are making a comeback. And so I wasn't sure if Maggie was an older cousin or a younger cousin, or, where. And so I started off thinking I should give her an older voice, but I'm working on it, Vincy. Thank you, Marion, and thank you for coming. I appreciate your visit to the live read tunnel here. All right, ladies, that's going to be it for this week. You are more than welcome to come back next week. Wednesday and Thursday, same time, same place. Just find the video and click on it, and you can chat with me. We have a really good time. Oh yeah, and I can do some really good old lady voices. I was kind of hoping Maggie wasn't a lady, but it didn't work. We do have a good time in here. It just depends on the genre we're reading, and sometimes it gets all crazy in here. Sometimes you need a hot flash kit when it comes up in here because it's getting hot. And sometimes you need to be wearing a diaper because it gets funny. You just never know. Thing about it is, you can come dressed or not dressed. I don't give a damn. And you can drink your drink of choice. I don't give a damn. And you can just have a good old time. My regular girls on here, they scream and holler at me the whole time, usually, especially like, all right, there it is. Ori did it. I want more. Yeah, they can get kind of angry at times. My favorite type of books to read, Southern books, for an obvious reason. I can really pull off several Southern characters. Um, my favorite genre to read on live reads is any book that's got some really strong personality characters. Does that make sense? Characters with a strong personality. Like Vinci says that I rock the old lady voices. I've got one that I'm reading this year, and it's for Michael James, and he's got a book every month because it's one series that's 12, 13 books long. And I do an old lady voice. Let's see if I can get. Let me see. Let me come back here. Let's see. As he walked through the door, he called back, "Oh, and your sister got a tattoo." Chuck looked up at his father. She's a rich old lady. So Vinci likes that one. And then I have the Southern old man. Let's see if I can get him in here. "I've known Ablina since I was 20 years old," Alan said. I trust her with my life. I've always had a good feeling about Maggie, and the wolves here say nothing but good things about her. Of course, you decide for yourself." So, yeah. Oh, nice, nasty Southern. Oh, honey, let me have her. Yeah. I was kind of hoping, I kept seeing that in there, and I kept thinking maybe I can do Aunt Sylvia, but she didn't show up. That's all right though. But yeah, I'm getting better at these voices. I'm getting them. Sometimes the nastier the better. Oh, and then I have and this is not the same kind of, I have a witchy voice, but this is not this kind of witchy voice. I have the Wizard of Oz type of witchy voice that does really good in that very candid paranormal. Like, I have some with like little fairies. And so I would be like, "I've known Ablina since I was 20 years old, and I trust her with my life, and I've always had a good feeling about Maggie," you know. And then I've got the really deep voice that just, I can do that dominant voice, like bears and werewolves, or if we're doing an erotic, I can get, Nina likes to call this my Barry White voice. And I like to tease her with it all the time. She gets tickled at me. But yeah, I've got several voices that I like, that I've worked on for the past 2 years. And so they're getting better and better. So, all right, have you got book 2 written already and working on 3? I want to wish you good luck with this book. It's very good, and we've got the stuff posted on, well, TikTok, Facebook. Nina usually, yay! Nina usually posts it on Twitter, and we try to get stuff over to my girl that does the Instagram stuff too. So we try to get it everywhere so that it gets posted at least on all the major media. That's about all we can do from here. So, all right, ladies. Oh, and MeWe. Sorry, Vinci, I totally forget about MeWe. All righty, because you're more than welcome. It is super fun, and you're more than welcome to share this video. Have your street team, if you've got one, share the video. Whatever you need to do. That's what we're here to do, is to help indie authors get their stuff sold. So, and you're welcome to share in the Nook anytime. So, I bet we are the stepchild over there. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. You too, Miss Shirley, and I will see you guys next week. Happy reading.